The Brackens and the Blackwoods hate each other. But why? When did it start, and who is in the right and the wrong on this? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. If you like theories, background, history and lore about A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, then this is the place for you. Welcome. House Bracken and House Blackwood are near neighbours in the Riverlands and have been for millennia. And they are also deadly enemies. There are specific grievances on both sides, it appears, but let's start with the basics of why some form of conflict was always likely. As well as their near proximity, in the grand scheme of things they are roughly equal-sized houses, and have been for much of their history. They both preside over large tracts of land in the Riverlands, on or near the Red Fork River, and both are capable of fielding larger armies than their overlords the Tullys. Natural rivals, then. And they both started off as first men houses, but whereas House Blackwood clung strongly to that, including maintaining the worship of the old gods, the Brackens converted to the faith of the Seven. Both houses have had periods of supremacy, including at different times claiming the title of River Kings, and have often found themselves on opposing sides of conflicts, though neither have ever been strong enough to completely wipe out the other. All of which makes an enmity likely, but it doesn't explain how it is so deeply ingrained, because it is. It has been going on for thousands of years, and people on both sides see the other as irredeemably bad and in the wrong on almost everything, and to understand that, we need to dive into their history. Although both houses were first men, it seems that the Blackwoods pushed further north into Westeros than the Brackens in the early days. Indeed, it seems that they ruled much of the Wolfswood north and west of Winterfell before being driven south by the Stark Kings of Winter sometime during the Age of Heroes. We're not told the details, but having been pushed out of the north, they ended up setting up home in land just north of the Brackens. One can only assume that some other house was pushed out of those lands by the Blackwoods, perhaps some long-forgotten dead house, or perhaps the Brackens themselves. Either way, the Brackens will have seen the Blackwoods as unwelcome new, strong neighbours. But the start of overt hostilities happened a little later. Jaime gets the Blackwood side of things from young Hoster Blackwood in A Dance with Dragons. He asks, "How did all this begin between Blackwood and Bracken? Is it written down?" "It is, my lord," the boy said, "but some of the histories were penned by their maesters and some by ours, centuries after the events that they purport to chronicle. It goes back to the Age of Heroes. The Blackwoods were kings in those days. The Brackens were petty lords, renowned for breeding horses. Rather than pay their king his just due, they used the gold their horses brought them to hire swords and cast him down." When did all this happen? 500 years before the Andals, 1,000 if the true history is to be believed, only no one knows when the Andals crossed the Narrow Sea. The true history says 4,000 years have passed since then, but some maesters claim it was only 2. Past a certain point, all the dates grow hazy and confused, and the clarity of history becomes the fog of legend. So 2 or 4,500 years ago, the Blackwoods ruled that part of the world, and the Brackens overthrew them. But that's just the Blackwood side of things. Earlier in the chapter, Lord Jonas Bracken, without being asked, advises Jaime that it does not serve to be too gentle with these Blackwoods. Treachery runs in their blood. Before the Andals came to Westeros, House Bracken ruled this river. We were kings and the Blackwoods were our vassals. But they betrayed us and usurped the crown. Every Blackwood is born a turncloak. So the Brackens claim it was the other way around, with them being the kings and the Blackwoods overthrowing them. Perhaps both things happened at different times, enough to start a grievance on both sides, certainly, and long enough ago for the truth of the matter to now be lost. Still, they briefly put their enmity to one side when a shared threat arrived, the Andal invasion. The two houses fought alongside each other against the invader until the Battle of the Bitter River, which saw the Andals emerge victorious, at which point the Brackens, as so many other houses had and would, converted to the faith of their conquerors, the new gods, the faith of the Seven. The Blackwoods, however, stuck firmly to the old gods. This was a big deal, and before we get on to other more recent grudges, it would be remiss not to note what George R. R. Martin himself has said on the matter, basically confirming that whatever happened after, the feud itself began in those early days. The feud between the Brackens and the Blackwoods, he says, goes back to the Age of Heroes. Both houses ruled the Riverlands as kings at various times. They were also divided by religion. The The Brackens went over to the new gods, while the Blackwoods remained with the old. It would take too long to list all of the battles and wars the two houses then found themselves on opposite sides of, but it's a lot. The resistance against House Hoare of the Iron Islands, the Dance of the Dragons, the Blackfire Rebellion, the War of the Five Kings, and so on. Perhaps sometimes they were genuinely supportive of different causes, but often their old enmity was what led them to picking sides opposing each other. If the Brackens wanted one thing, the Blackwoods would oppose it, and vice versa. Nevertheless, perhaps House Blackwood's biggest grievance against the Brackens is not about a war, but a tree. When Jamie is at Raventree Hall, he spies their weirwood tree, and his host tells him that the Brackens poisoned it. For 1,000 years it has not shown a leaf. In another 1,000 it will have turned to stone, the maesters say. Weirwoods never rot. This is not just a tree, of course. It is their weirwood tree, a holy tree, as sacred to them as the Winterfell weirwood is to the Starks, and we're told that it is ancient and colossal. That's the word Jamie uses. Their family home is named after it is so important to them, and the Brackens poisoned it. At least, according to the Blackwoods. We haven't heard the Bracken side of that story. Perhaps the Blackwoods did something equally terrible to them. Then there is the incident of the mistresses of King Aegon IV. Barbara Bracken was the 5th official mistress of the king and bore him a son, Aegor Bittersteel Rivers. But when her father overstepped the mark by talking openly of a possible marriage, she was discarded and replaced by Melissa Blackwood, who also bore him a son, Brynden Bloodraven Rivers. Melissa was then replaced in turn with another Bracken, Bethany. This obviously wasn't just about the favour of the king. It was a matter of pride between the two houses and led to one of the more obvious, if rather crude, reminders of their rivalry. When visiting Stonehenge one time, Aegon IV saw a couple of nearby hills and announced that they reminded him of his mistress's breasts, declaring they should be called Barbara's teats. Later, when Melissa Blackwood was his mistress, he renamed them Missy's teats and gave that land to the Blackwoods. The name and ownership of that land has remained in contention since. There are two things to note here. First, it's not just the hills, but the issue of disputed lands, because there's actually quite a lot of it. Battle Valley and the entire village of Blackbuckle are disputed, and it's only the King's peace that prevents them from being the cause of even more wars. And second, there's the lingering suspicion that at least some of the cause of the Blackfire Rebellion was this hatred between the two houses. Theoretically, the main actors in that war were King Daeron and the pretender Daemon Blackfire, but everyone knew the real forces behind it were Bloodraven, son of Melissa Blackwood, and Bittersteel, son of Barbara Bracken. Whatever their other reasons for supporting their candidates, they will both have been raised to despise the other's house. The world of Ice and Fire goes further. What then tipped Daemon over into proclaiming for the throne? It seems likely it was another of the great bastards, Sir Aegor Rivers, called Bittersteel. Perhaps it was his Bracken blood that made Aegor so choleric and so quick to take offence. Perhaps it was the ignominious fall of the Brackens in King Aegon's esteem, leading to his exile from Aegon's court. Or perhaps it was only his rivalry with his half-brother and fellow bastard Brynden Rivers, who had been able to maintain his close relations at court, for Bloodraven's mother had been well loved during her life and was fondly remembered, so the Blackwoods did not suffer as the Brackens did when the king cast off his respective mistresses. And though this is written clearly in a sympathetic way to the Blackwoods, it's pretty clear that the brother that I hated, that Bloodraven mentions to Bran, is Bittersteel, so the antipathy ran both ways. Bringing the story up to date, the Brackens and Blackwoods, of course, find themselves on opposing sides in the War of the Five Kings, with, at the present moment, the Brackens having the upper hand. The Blackwoods have been forced to cede some land to the Brackens and so on, though Lord Titus Blackwood is very clear that though he doesn't mind people thinking he bent the knee to the king, he would never bend the knee to the Brackens. Jamie's first chapter in A Dance with Dragons, where this takes place, is actually a low-key favourite of mine. It almost feels like Jamie is going through the motions as he meets one lord after the other. They both go to great pains to tell Jamie of their past grievances against the other house, as if that is far more important than the situation in the wider war being waged around them. Jamie almost seems bored of it. The Brackens and Blackwoods hate each other, and always would. Everyone knew what concessions would be needed and what wouldn't be accepted, and that all of this would just set up the next conflict between them. Which isn't to say that there haven't been attempts at peace over the years. Perhaps the most famous was the establishment of House Justman after the Andal invasion by Benedict Rivers, a bastard from both House Blackwood and House Bracken. That family then ruled the area for 3 centuries before falling to the Storm Kings. But despite this, and other marriages over the years, the old wounds keep resurfacing. It's as if we're being challenged to give up hope as well. Talking to Hoster Blackwood, Jamie seems sombre and rather downbeat about the whole thing. So many years, so many wars, so many kings. You'd think someone would have made a peace. Someone did, my lord. Many someones. We've had 100 peaces with the Brackens, many sealed with marriages. There's Blackwood blood in every Bracken, and Bracken blood in every Blackwood. The old king's peace lasted half a century, but then some fresh quarrel broke out, and the old wounds opened and began to bleed again. That's how it always happens, my father says. So long as men remember the wrongs done to their forebears, no peace will ever last. So we go on, century after century, with us hating the Brackens and them hating us. My father says there will never be an end to it. Jamie's response is to parrot what his father would have done, basically to kill everyone from the opposing house in order to achieve peace, as he had with House Rain and House Tarbeck. But then, asked if that was why the Lannisters killed all of House Stark, Jamie seems to have second thoughts. He thinks to himself about how he hopes Sansa has survived somehow. He wonders how Brienne is getting on looking for her. It is a mark of Jamie changing, being less cynical and less wedded to the solutions his father or others in his family would have come up with. He might not yet have much hope for the world, but he wishes he did. And it has to make us wonder, is there hope for houses Bracken and Blackwood, or are they destined to always fight? How will they end up when this story is finished? Will one side prevail? Will they still be at each other's throats? Will a fragile peace emerge? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you'd like to see more A Song of Ice and Fire videos like this, there's a link to my playlist on the left of your screen now. Or to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.